The old house stood at the end of our street, abandoned and shrouded in mystery. For years, it had been the subject of whispered stories among the neighborhood kids, tales of its dark past and the peculiar happenings that took place within its crumbling walls. Most adults dismissed the rumors, but to us kids, it was a place of intrigue and thrill, the ultimate playground for our wild imaginations. One evening, emboldened by our growing bravado and a few too many horror movies, my friends and I made the decision to explore the infamous house. There were 4 of us, me, Chris, Jamie, and Sarah. We agreed to meet at the house just after sunset, our hearts racing with a mix of fear and excitement. As I walked to the end of the street, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the pavement. The air turned cooler, sending a chill down my spine. The house loomed ahead, its dilapidated structure almost glowing in the twilight. Dark windows stared down at us like empty eyes, and the broken porch creaked under our weight as we approached. "Are we really doing this?" Jamie asked, her voice wavering as she stood at the foot of the steps. "Absolutely," Chris said, puffing out his chest to mask his nerves. "What's the worst that could happen? Let's just get it over with," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. We stepped inside, the door creaking ominously as it swung open. The interior was dim, illuminated only by slivers of moonlight filtering through the dusty windows. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and as we ventured further, the floorboards creaked beneath our feet, sending echoes through the silence. The living room was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets, giving the place an eerie, ghostly feel. Dust motes danced in the air as we moved, and I could feel a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. It felt as if we were being watched, but I dismissed it as my imagination running wild. "Let's check out the basement," Chris suggested, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if there's something down there? It's just an empty basement." "Come on, it'll be fun," Chris insisted, and before anyone could protest, he marched toward the staircase leading down into the darkness. Reluctantly, we followed him, the wooden steps creaking under our weight as we descended into the abyss. The air grew cooler and mustier with each step, and I could feel my heart racing in my chest. At the bottom of the stairs, we found ourselves in a large, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with old, rusty shelves filled with dusty jars and boxes, and in the center of the room stood a single light bulb, swinging gently from the ceiling. The weak light barely illuminated the corners, creating deep shadows that felt alive. "This place is creepy," Jamie said, her voice trembling as she clutched her phone, the screen casting a faint glow. "Come on, it's not that bad," I replied, trying to lighten the mood. "Let's see what we can find." As we explored the basement, the atmosphere shifted. Strange sounds echoed around us, the scuttling of something in the dark, a soft whisper that sent chills down my spine. I glanced at my friends, their expressions reflecting my unease. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hear what?" Chris replied, though his bravado was slipping. Before I could respond, Jamie gasped, pointing toward a shadowy corner of the room. "What's that?" We all turned to look, but there was nothing there, only darkness. "Just shadows," I said, though I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Chris moved closer to the corner, shining his phone's flashlight into the depths. "It's probably just a pile of old junk," he said dismissively, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the basement, making us all jump. "What was that?" Sarah squeaked, her eyes wide with terror. "Probably just the house settling," Chris said, but the uncertainty in his tone was evident. We stood in silence, our breaths shallow as we processed what had just happened. I could feel the tension thickening the air, and I glanced at my friends, noting the fear in their eyes. "Maybe we should go back upstairs," Jamie suggested, her voice shaky. "Just a few more minutes," Chris insisted. "We came all this way, Let's at least check out that shelf over there. Reluctantly, we followed him to a large shelf in the corner, covered in cobwebs. As we brushed the webs aside, I noticed an old trunk at the bottom, its leather cracked and faded. "Look at this," I said, my heart racing with excitement. "I wonder what's inside." "Open it," Jamie urged, her fear momentarily forgotten. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid, revealing a jumble of old photographs and yellowed papers. "These are so old," I murmured, sifting through them. The photos were black and white, depicting a family that once lived in the house. They looked happy, but something in their eyes seemed off, as if they were hiding a dark secret. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, and the light bulb flickered ominously. I shivered, a sense of foreboding creeping in. "We should go," I said, my voice low. "Just a little longer," Chris insisted, his curiosity getting the better of him. As I pulled out another photo, I froze. It was a picture of the same family, but in the background, there was a shadowy figure lurking, its features indistinguishable. My heart dropped as I felt the oppressive weight of the basement close in around us. "Guys, I don't think we should be here," I said, my voice shaky. Just then, the whispers returned, faint but insistent, echoing through the basement. It sounded like a voice calling out, but I couldn't make out the words. "What is that?" Jamie asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Stop it. You're just imagining things," Chris shouted, trying to sound brave but failing miserably. "Let's get out of here," Sarah pleaded, stepping back toward the stairs. As we turned to leave, the light bulb flickered violently, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. Panic surged through me as I realized we were not alone. We raced up the stairs, fear propelling us forward, but as we reached the top, the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. "What the hell?" Chris shouted, banging on the door. "Let us out." The whispers transformed into anguished cries, echoing through the darkness. I felt paralyzed with fear, my heart pounding in my chest. "This isn't happening," I gasped, looking around for another way out. "Is there a window?" Jamie yelled, panic evident in her voice. We frantically searched the room, but every exit was sealed tight. The cries grew louder, drowning out our desperate pleas. I could feel something dark and malevolent pressing against us, a palpable force that was suffocating. "Stop! Please, just let us go," Sarah cried, tears streaming down her face. But the house responded with eerie silence, as if reveling in our fear. In that moment, I knew we had stumbled upon something far more sinister than we could have imagined. "Think," Chris shouted, his voice breaking. "There has to be a way out." I remembered the trunk and the photographs. "We need to go back to the trunk," I shouted. "There might be something there." We sprinted back to the basement, the air thickening with every step. The trunk sat ominously in the corner, and as we reached it, I noticed a small, glimmering object sticking out from beneath the photographs. "It's a key," I exclaimed, holding it up for everyone to see. "What does it open?" Jamie asked, her eyes wide with hope. "Maybe it's for the door," Chris said, rushing toward the entrance. We gathered around, desperately inserting the key into the lock, but it wouldn't budge. "Come on," I cried, panic surging. "Maybe it's not for the door," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "What if it opens something else?" With newfound determination, I rushed back to the trunk. "Let's check it out." As we rifled through the contents, I noticed a small locked box hidden beneath the papers. "This must be it," I shouted, holding it up. We worked together, and as we inserted the key into the lock, the box clicked open, revealing a small journal. "This must have belonged to the family," I said, my heart racing as I flipped through the pages. The journal was filled with frantic writings, accounts of strange occurrences, whispers in the night, and an overwhelming sense of dread. They were being haunted, I murmured, the realization sinking in. They weren't just stories, Jamie whispered, her voice shaking. They were real. Just then, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. I could feel the presence pressing down on us, but we pressed on, flipping through the pages until one entry caught my eye. The key to freedom lies within the shadows, it read, followed by a warning about the dark figure that haunted their family. Shadows, I muttered, glancing around the dim basement. Do you think it means something here? Chris asked, his voice tense. It has to, I replied, heart pounding. What if we have to confront whatever is lurking in the shadows? I'm not sure I can do that, Sarah whispered, terror evident in her eyes. We don't have a choice, I said, resolve hardening within me. We can't let it trap us like it did them. We took a deep breath and turned to face the dark corner of the basement. Whatever you are, we're not afraid, I shouted, my voice echoing in the silence. The whispers swelled, angry and tumultuous, as if the house itself was responding to our defiance. We stood together, holding hands as a united front against the encroaching darkness. Together, I said, squeezing their hands. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. We stepped into the shadows, our hearts racing as we felt the weight of the presence closing in. The air crackled with tension, and the whispers reached a deafening crescendo, drowning out everything else. Suddenly, I saw it. A shadowy figure emerging from the depths, its face shrouded in darkness. I could feel the chill emanating from it, and for a moment, fear paralyzed me. But then I remembered the words in the journal. Face your fears, I shouted, pushing forward. We're not afraid of you. The figure hesitated, its form flickering like a flame. I could feel my friends tightening their grip on my hands, drawing strength from each other. Leave us alone, Jamie cried, her voice breaking through the chaos. With that, the figure lunged forward. But instead of terror, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity wash over me. You don't control us, I yelled, and in that moment, the figure shrank back, flickering like a dying ember. As we pressed forward, the whispers transformed into anguished cries, but we didn't back down. We are stronger than our fears, I shouted, and slowly, the shadows began to dissipate, the light returning to the room. With one final scream, the figure vanished into the darkness, and the basement fell silent. We stood there, breathing heavily, the weight of fear lifting. Did we do it? Sarah whispered, looking around in disbelief. I think so, I said, a sense of relief washing over me. We turned to leave, and as we reached the top of the stairs, the door swung open effortlessly, as if the house had released its grip on us. Stumbling outside, we collapsed onto the front lawn, gasping for air. The night was still and peaceful, the horrors of the basement now a distant memory. I can't believe we made it, Chris said, his voice shaking. Neither can I, Jamie whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. We looked at each other, a mix of fear and triumph in our eyes. We had faced the darkness together, and though we were shaken, we emerged stronger. In the days that followed, the experience haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house still held secrets, that the darkness was waiting for the next group of curious souls to wander in. But I also knew that we had conquered something within ourselves, a deep-seated fear that had threatened to consume us. We had proven that we could stand together against the shadows, and that knowledge was a powerful weapon. That night marked a turning point for us. We had learned that fear only held power over us if we allowed it to, and as I looked around at my friends, I felt a sense of hope blossom within me. We were no longer just a group of kids searching for thrills. We were a team that had faced the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. We made a pact that night. No matter what we would face, our fears together, and we would never let darkness consume us again. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on our experience, feeling grateful for the challenge that had pushed us to our limits. The house may have been a place of terror, but it ultimately gifted us the courage to confront the darkness within ourselves. In the end, it wasn't just about surviving the basement. It was about understanding that we were not alone. We each had our own shadows to face, but together we formed a tapestry of strength, resilience, and unwavering support. And though the darkness would always exist, we knew we had the power to confront it head-on, no matter what shape it took. Together, we had faced the abyss, and together we would continue to stand strong against whatever lay ahead.